Welcome to Broad Prospecting. I'm John. So let's do general business tips, lesson one here. There is a big gap in a lot of companies where you have a corporate office and then you have satellite areas like production facilities or whatever is happening with the company that is not in the corporate office when you have basically non-tech, non-IT related businesses. So manufacturing is a big one. If you ever go to like landscaping, construction, that sort of industry, you're going to have operations in the field versus operations at the office. This sort of dynamic is, I would say, ultra commonplace outside of a few niche industries. So this is going to apply to most people. Now, when you have that sort of structure, there's this, ooh man, I'm going to fall off my chair. You know what, I'm going to leave that in, why not? So there's this weird dynamic between the office and the field where the field almost treats the office as an entirely different business. You know, they'll say, oh, corporate says X, corporate says Y. Well, there's reasons for that. But that also comes with this attitude among people that work in the quote unquote corporate office very frequently, where corporate is kind of like an outside group and there's an us versus them mentality. Now, when you go into business, if you come in with a business degree, there's usually this kind of attitude that comes with a business graduate that says, I want to work at a corporate office, have a fancy cubicle, perks, whatever it might be. Don't fall into that, especially early in your career, but really any time in your career. Almost all the gains you're going to make in your career if you're in this sort of setting are understanding what's happening at the actual production or field facilities or operations so that you can make best choices from the corporate offices. I'd say out of probably just under half the places I've worked, I've watched people come in that were really good at things. They had a technical skill set that was fabulous, and they would never go out to the field. So here's a good example. I worked at Dairy Queen corporate, and they make everyone do some training at in the corporate facility near headquarters as part of their onboarding. After that, no one's required to go into that building again if they don't need to. I would go out there any chance I had, really, because the more I understood about their ops, the better I could do my job. Now, albeit the job was to set up a system for the franchisees in the field, but I still went down there way more than anybody else. And I watched project managers come through, I watched a variety of people come through, and they never quite got ahead. They never really had hits. The projects they did, didn't roll as fast as they could. There was no goodwill. They couldn't reach out to a franchisee and say, hey, what do you think about this idea or subject, or would this help you? Never happened. I did that almost every day. So if you get in the habit of going to your field or remote operations when you're working at a corporate or a central office for business, and you can learn that business from the ground up, good. Do it. Take every opportunity. I would even ask for opportunities to go and do that if you're in a corporate office, if it's applicable to your job at all. Say, hey, I need to understand this thing so I can get this done. Your management's going to like you from corporate because there's always the complaint that corporate doesn't understand. And if you want to understand, you're going to stand out. Second thing that's going to happen here, if you go out and you get that rapport with the field, you can go back and say, hey guys, I'm doing this thing, I'm running into this problem, why? And you'd be amazed how many things the corporate or central offices don't understand about what's happening in the field operations. I've been to facilities where they tell me, oh yeah, we do this thing entirely differently than corporate thinks we're doing it, because if we do it this other way, corporate's going to create problems for us. So we've learned that we can work around them in this manner. And usually those processes are actually really good at face value. I could list a few right now from different places I've worked where I think, geez, that person should be at corporate making plans for the field operations across our company because they'd be better at it than corporate is. Now, I hope my boss doesn't see that and get mad at me eventually, but it's the reality. The other thing you could do in this vein is never look at a job that's in a production facility or in a remote operation from like the central office as being bad for your career, especially in the beginning. I would actually suggest that if you're coming into the workplace, you don't have a specific thing you want to do, where you're like, I kind of have to be in an office doing this one thing to get ahead in this one career. Accounting might be something like that. Certain finance jobs might be like that, or IT. If you can take a job in let's say a production facility, every production facility is going to have at least one administrative person in the building. Usually they're a supervisor or an admin who does shipping, receiving, or books out all the production and sends numbers back up to the central office or whatever. And that's in the smallest facilities. In the larger facilities, you're going to have someone that reconciles and manages all the inventory with the systems. You're going to have a person that does all of the planning if it's a big production facility. You're going to have a person that goes through and does all of the tracking and purchasing. You're going to have a person that does the receiving, shipping and receiving coordination. You're going to have at least, I would say, if your facility is in the $100 million of sales in a year plus range, you can expect to see anywhere from 5 to 15 people who are centrally administrative in some professional manner that you typically see within corporate offices. And if you go into those roles, you know, whether it's in a big city or if you move out into the country, you know, take a job for a year, 2, 3, whatever it might be, one, you're going to be pretty well qualified on average because the workforce out in the middle of nowhere, especially if you move out of the cities, is going to be smaller. So being competitive and getting into those roles is going to be easier than getting them in a city. 1. 2, once you're in that role, they're going to be pleased there's someone on site that can do these things, and you're going to get more opportunities given to you because if you're good at Excel, good at using their systems, good at whatever it might be, they're going to say, hey, this person's good, let's drop this on them. You're going to learn almost everything about their operations, and it's going to put you ahead if you want to move back into a corporate setting, or if you want to stay in the remote operations setting and you kind of like where you're at, you can move up the chain there because there's always a plant manager, there's always a assistant plant manager. If you're at a production facility, there's going to be managers of things like inventory planning. Depending how large your facility is, maybe there's a purchasing manager on site. And guess what? They're hard to find. I've been on the teams trying to hire for these roles. I managed a small facility doing production, shipping, receiving when I was, 2 years ago now. I was there for basically a year. And that was a whole different story I'll get into sometime. But point being, it's never a good idea to look down on remote operations if you're part of a central operation. If you can get in there, it's going to be easier to start your career where you want to be if you're having trouble finding that locally. And the third thing is, it's going to set you apart if you want to move up into the corporate setting, or if you think, hey, I want to get up fast, move up fast. Okay, cool. Well, if you start at the entry level in a corporate setting where there is 30 people lined up to take your job outside of the company, and you've got a team of 8 people you're competing with inside the company, what are the odds you're going to outcompete all of those 8 and all the people waiting to take your job after you? I mean, you could. I hope you can. But the reality is it's just going to be a little bit easier to get your foot in the door, get yourself situated, and get the skills you need. The other aspect of this is people don't realize if you work in a facility like that, you might actually make more than getting an entry-level job in the cities. So I made this mistake in my career when I first started. I thought, I need to get in a corporate office. I have a business degree. That was super dumb. Why? I ended up working, I think I was making $13.50 an hour as a pharmaceutical sales rep. Yeah, not much. And I remember seeing posters saying lead production, employee, blah, 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 starting 15 an hour, offers overtime on the side of the road, and thinking, interesting, I could have been a production lead potentially because they had said, we'll train on the sign. Could have made $1.50 more an hour, which is basically $3,000 a year before any overtime. And I would have been in the same place now because I ended up working for manufacturing and production, franchising businesses over time. I've been at Dairy Queen corporate. I work at a manufacturing location right now. I've been in that industry the whole time. And I would have gotten ahead further. I wouldn't have had to play catch up on all the field operations. And I highly, highly suggest people think about that if they're getting into their career or if they're looking at what their career path is going to be and they have the option of trying to do the whole competing corporate with all the people right next to you versus diversify and understand the broader picture of your business and your career. Highly suggest it. So we'll wrap that one there. Thanks for tuning in here. Like, share, subscribe, whatever. The drill they always say in these YouTube channels. So thanks. Have a great night.